It's about stopping something deteriorating. So we see this a lot in the heritage sector, where people are doing research on, if I tell you we have people working on wallpaper research, I saw a few of you go, because I just told you wallpaper research, and that feels a bit mad, right? Just be honest, it feels a bit mad. If I tell you that wallpaper is in historic sites, and if we don't do that research, the knowledge of how people lived is lost forever, suddenly it feels a little bit more important. Their research is seeking to steady, to preserve that knowledge. And sometimes that's what we're trying to do. As a dementia carer, I could not improve my dad's condition, but I could try and steady it. So if in your world, the problem is something is getting worse, holding steady is a massive impact, and don't shy away from that. I'm going to try and remember what's on the next one.
Remote controlling, Jamie, I think. You just resolved it.
Sounds working though, so. At the time, we're almost there, sorry.
We'll do it. It's seamless.
Yeah, always.
It wouldn't be a university presentation without technical issues. I'm guessing there'll be a fire alarm. I mean, that's possible.
No, there's no fire alarm today.
Doesn't mean anything. Fabulous, thank you. There is no way I can give you a full list of every kind of impact. That is insane. It's not possible. We would be here for about 43 years anyway. So what I've put up here is a short list of some examples of the kinds of things we see in impact. Our research can and often does do things like changing policy, changing guidelines. I have a number of sports colleagues who are changing the guidelines for, for doping, for the way Gaelic games are run, etc., etc. We see it all over the place. And if you just kind of scan down that list, you'll see there's all sorts of things in there which include, but are far broader than things around money. And often we can think that impact has to be about selling things and big money. It doesn't. If we look over to this other side, we've got things like widening access, reducing stigma. Anything in any way our research can help someone out there, an organisation out there, it's impact. And we see that across every discipline, getting people included and all those kind of things. So have a think for your area of research, your area of interest. What matters and what can change look like? Now, I've said that there is no kind of single list of impact types. Absolutely stand by. However, it is not the case that there's no kind of structures here. And I think the ESRC, the Economic and Social Research Council, give us probably the best three-part structure for this. So they say you can have one of three types of impact or several of these in your project. The first is an instrumental type of impact, a change in a thing, a policy, a behaviour, a service, the way a door's designed, guidelines or something, a thing. You point at it, measure it, ta-da, got impact. Really straightforward. It's the most kind of obvious and countable type of impact. But it's not always what we have. So my background is in sexual health. And a lot of that time it's about reducing stigma. It's about reducing the embarrassment of teenagers to go and get emergency contraception. There isn't an instrumental change in there. Okay, so we have to think a little bit more widely. And again, think for your areas of interest and those which you're supporting. Because a second type can be capacity building, the change in the ability to do something. Skills have been developed, technology has been improved, this kind of uplift of opportunity. People are now able to access something, know about something. And it's incredibly important we don't lose sight of how important that is. Now, the third one is conceptual impact, the change in the way something is thought about. Good luck measuring it. Tricky, not impossible, but tricky. Because firstly, you need to know how it was thought about first. And then you've got to measure the change. Any psychologists in the room? Yeah, we know how difficult that is, eh? Yeah. But what you're thinking is, how did I know there was a problem with the way it was thought about first? And therefore, how can I know it's different? And what you're looking for is things like the way the media report it differently, the way people talk about it differently, the way it's brought into a debate in Parliament it was never brought in before. So you're looking for ways in which that thought change is demonstrated. Because conceptual change can be the basis for major social change. For those of you who remember it, HIV and AIDS crises in the 80s and all of the fear and everything else, there needed to be a massive shift in people's understanding of what it meant to have HIV and AIDS. Without that conceptual shift, everything else was kind of tough to nothing. So just have a think in your area, what needs to change? What does it look like? And this message is a key one I always want to convey. So that if you are new to impact, particularly, you can think there's a kind of a myth of linearity. You do research, and the funders reinforce this linearity, I would say. You do research, there is an output. Woo! There is then an outcome, and then there's this big shiny thing called impact down there. Sometimes, yes, but very often it doesn't quite work like that. Now, I think I'm right in understanding a lot of you are working very applied settings. A lot of applied, you are making impact daily. Your findings can have impact. You find something new, it goes on, goes out, people do different things. But think about those people you're working with. Every time they're interacting with the research, then their skills might be going up. They might be more confident in something. If I give you an example outside of certainly the sports domain, in our arts faculty, we have a researcher who does work on conflict resolution in Rwanda and does that through getting groups of young people together in the conflict zones using arts methods to get them to talk about kind of experiences and what they want to happen policy-wise. All of those people talk about having their voices heard for the first time, being more confident in something. That's an impact. If your voice has never been heard and in the process of research is heard, my God, that's an important effect. So impact can come from the moment the research starts. It doesn't always need an output. And I say that now, my publishing colleagues are in the room. Very sorry. So it's not an endpoint, it's series of changes. Now, the UK academic context. I want to make sure we cover this. You'll notice I did not lead with REF, and I never will, because impact is not the same as REF. I will always say REF pays my mortgage, impact makes me happy. Because REF is a formal driver for impact that puts certain stamps on it. And we, there are reasons we have to do it in terms of, kind of institutional, stance, survivability and everything else. Let's not go into that. But actually, there's many places that drive us. There's many things that drive us to do impact. And I've just put a few on here. Most of our major funders require impact in some way. It used to be a pathway to impact within research councils. They took that away, not the requirement for impact, they just took away the standalone document saying, well, the sector's ready now, they could just put it in their bid. No, because we haven't been given a chance to learn it properly yet, but it's in there. Our health funders, everyone else, they want it. So I've got a screen to show you in a minute about what funders want, but it's in there, it's a big deal. We also have the research excellence framework. For those of you who don't know, a kind of cyclical assessment of research, a single screen I've got on that in a moment, that leads us to have a certain amount of money for the institution. Things like the knowledge exchange framework, you may or may not be familiar with, don't worry if you're not, it's just an indication of there are other agendas the university has to deliver on. In this case, this is like the regional footprint of the institution. How much is Leeds Beckett helping the Leeds region? Pretty much. But then you'll have an institutional mission. Do you know what your institution strategy says about impact? I guarantee the word's in there somewhere, because every university has impact in their strategy, because they'd be shooting themselves in the foot if they didn't. Go have a look, see what they say. At Lincoln was built by the community about 25 years ago, like physically built by the community. And unsurprisingly, our strategy has words to the effect of supporting our region, transformational change in our region. Go have a look at yours. Then we have things like sustainable development goals. If you haven't seen these, go Google them. These are big ticket global endeavours, no poverty, zero hunger, etc. You can and do support some of that, probably without even realising. And the last one on here is impact as purpose. You could take everything else off that list, and for many of us, we'd still want to do it because there is too much of an opportunity to help society with what we do. You may have all of those, none of those. Have a think. And in this slide, I want to remind us, and that I have to thank David Phipps, my collaborator in Canada, for this reminder. This is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and Article 27 says everyone has the right to blah, 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 share in scientific advancement and its benefits. It is a human right to share the benefits of research. This is not a glory game or a vanity game or any of those things, nor is it on our shoulders to deliver all the impact for the world. But it's a reminder that this is well beyond REF. This is about being part of a global endeavour for change. Now, a couple more slides. And we will get to a bit where you chat, promise. I put this slide up just for those of you who may be needing to do a funding bid and want a quick crib sheet. As a reminder, the slides are available, and I'll make sure before I leave here, they're definitely online. If you see any terms like return on investment, usable, blah, 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 the funder is saying, how does this make a difference? And what they want to have is detail on these things. Every funder is slightly different, but what you need to convince them is there is a problem of some kind. Your research can help fix it in some way. You will actively, not just disseminate, actively engage in some way to get that research out there. It can have an impact and it fits what the funder needs to do. So I literally just want to offer you that as a quick crib sheet of the things you need in a funding bid, because often people miss part of that out and it can cause some issues with the funders. And if you've got non-academic reviewers there, they are looking for, how does it make a difference for me? If any of you work in social care, they often have social care users, advisors on the panels, and the social care user says, that's brilliant, but it won't work. It makes no difference to me. I don't even know what you're talking about. Tailor it. Then we have the rest. And this first section is more of the kind of, let's call it the textbook bit. We'll move on to principles later. But this, I wanted to make sure that you understood what REF was, even if you're not actively in it, because it is such a big deal for UK universities. It is massive. So just to give you a quick summary, REF is part of, we have what's called the dual funding structure in the UK. And put very, very simply, because I don't understand the maths, but this is the simplest way to do it. We have money comes in for research in two directions. Competitive bidding, so where you go, funding project, please give me some money, please give me some money. And a kind of block grant from the government called quality research or QR funding. That block grant is determined by REF, and REF is worth £2 billion. This is not small change. So for us to get an amount of that money, we have to do well in REF. Okay, and REF is this kind of 7-ish yearly assessment of outputs, environment and impact. I'll talk about the changes in a moment. We submit in units of assessment, kind of broad subject areas. And part of that is these impact case studies, a quota, a selection of case studies from that unit. So not everything has to have impact. It's just a kind of a selective list. And they are marked what's called reach and significance. Unclassified is basically fail on something. 4 is woohoo, we've got the money. I think there's more technical terms, but we'll go with that. If you want to, and I urge you to go, look at the case studies. They are amazing. And I know you've got several from this university. Go look at them. Changes, if you want to know about them, the 3 sections have been changed for the next time. So output has become contribution to knowledge. Basically, not just your outputs, but how does it help your field, your discipline, the kind of, you know, the profession within which you sit. Environment has become people, culture and environment, because who knew environment didn't have people in already? And engagement and impact. So engagement's been added to impact. I won't go through all of the case study stuff, but there's some flex there. Pretty much impact case studies are the same with a bit of amount needed different. And we may have rigor. But environment is a big deal this time. So what you may see and what most universities are doing quite rightly is really putting time and effort into making sure the research culture is rich, supportive, safeguarding of people and so forth. And that's what you'll see, I think, probably in the next few years. And if you need to write a case study, you're basically filling in this sentence. And if you need to write a funding bid, you're basically filling out this sentence in the future tense. So this is probably the most useful. I should have just given you a slide. And good. This is the main one. What you're saying is we did research on something. We connected it to research, this to society in some way. Because of this, something changed, and we know that because. And if you're doing a funding bid, we will do research on, we will connect, etc. Because you're trying to show that story of research-led change. And this is the sentence or the couple of sentences that does that. And when we say demonstrated by, I'm not going to go into heavy amount anything on evidence particularly today. But what you're saying is something that corroborates that claim of change, not the claim of how great your paper was or how well attended your event was, actually corroborates the change. Because otherwise we risk assuming it. It may be that we're not doing that for a bad reason, but actually we need to really give society the chance to say to us, yes, it made a difference, or actually, no, it didn't. Otherwise, we can't really do our job. Okay. Has anyone read this report? Not even at bedtime. You have, yeah. Some of us had to, haven't we? Yeah. This is each ref cycle, because everything seems to work in ref cycles, a report comes out around 18 months or so after, where someone has done analysis of the case studies. There was one from 2014. This is the one from 2021. I'd say go have a look, but it has the weirdest graphs. If you're a graph person, go enjoy. There are some look like magic carpets. Yeah. Happy days, go enjoy. I mean, it's amazing. I don't understand it. It's brilliant. I don't understand it. But what it shows is this, that if you look at the case studies, there were over 6,000 case studies submitted within the UK sector across 34 subject areas. They've identified 79 impact topics, which cluster into 12 units. So when I say impact topics, what they've done is a kind of text analysis of the cases to find the words to say what impacts have we had. That comes out as 79 things, which they've clustered into 12 groups. Honestly, go have a look. I would urge a little bit of caution, as I did last time. Some of the categories of impact make sense. Surgical appliances, health and well-being. One of the categories is World War I and World War II. I'm fairly sure we haven't had an impact on that. The education of, the preservation of, the knowledge of, the commemoration of, yes. But just be aware, these are not topics of the type of impact we have. They are topics which can be pulled out as text. Okay. But this is probably the biggest thing, 48,000 odd impact pathways. There is no single route to impact. It is always fitted to what you're doing. So if your impact pathway looks different to someone else, great. That's what it should be. Couple of headlines. Go and look at those case studies. But I tell you now, they show the sausages, not the sausage factory. If you had a case study last time, oh my God, well done. They were hard-won things. They were not easy. They were pretty horrid to do at times. But they screen out all of the failures, the efforts, all the times it went wrong and you had to get drunk to, clear your way through the day. They are glossy competition entries because we're trying to get money. I do say that with no disservice to the people who had case studies. Seriously, they are hard-won things. But when you look at them, and do go look at them, if you think, my God, I can't match that, you are not a failure. These are the selected entries from universities. And it's slightly heartbreaking to me continually that people think that is what impact is. No, they are the selected versions. It's like trying to understand humans by looking at a beauty pageant. Yeah, that's what it is. The second thing to say, and has anyone heard of the hidden ref? Yeah, few people, fabulous. If you don't know about it, go look. Ref, it does all sorts of things, but one of the things it has one of the consequences of it is it screens out a lot of the people who were involved in it. So if you look at anything to do with Ref, it talks about the researchers, doesn't say anything about the librarians, the professional services, the technicians, etc. Kind of invisible. The hidden Ref is seeking to unveil, to make visible those people that support it. And in addition, there's a 5% manifesto. This 5% manifesto, and Tony will correct me if I'm wrong because Tony is on the Hidden Ref board, is around welcoming, encouraging, endorsing more creative outputs, non-traditional outputs. If you look at the numbers, we had like thousands and thousands of articles because they're kind of a safe bet. Actually, we are a much richer community than that, aren't we? Don't we do some more cool stuff? So this is a kind of sign up to really push those things, to be more creative. And the last bit on here. Who's heard of Grimpact? I invite you to learn about Grimpact. I said in one of our early slides, impact is the provable benefit of research in the real world, but we have the risk of doing harm. For any of those of you who remember the MMR and autism, the vaccination, the research that seemed to suggest that if you were vaccinated with MMR, it was related to autism. We are seeing now the damage of that, where people are not vaccinated. We have the risk of doing harm, not just from our findings, but the way we do research. This is a new initiative, Gemma Derrick at Bristol, trying to collect those stories of Grimpact, not in a kind of blame culture way, but actually to say, if we understand them, then maybe we can avoid them. So check out Grimpact. Now, I'm not going to go through this slide heavily. Do not worry, I just want to make sure it's on the slides. We had the headline on here was taking an impact literate approach to impact. I just want to give you the quick story how this came along. Myself and David Phipps, Canadian counterpart, you need to meet him. Jazz hands, marvellous fella. He and I, have you seen him? Yeah. So anyone that mentions his name, you've seen him? Nod. You think I'm excited about impact? Good God. Right. He and I met at an event 2014, just past REF. It was an impact event in the UK. And to say the room, which is full of impact people, was utter low ebb, does no justice to it. People were crying, burnt out, hated impact. Someone declared they were going to leave their job. I mean, it was horrible. And it was born from the burnout of trying to collect the evidence, do the impact, kind of salvage this thing called impact. And we went, this is dreadful. We need to do something about it. As in a sector, we need to do something about it. What can we do? Long story short, we ended up with this body of work on impact literacy. The first model here, the second model here. And it says this: if we are going to do impact well for everyone, not just society, but for those of us who are trying to drive impact, everyone at least needs to understand who's involved, how it can work, and what impact can happen. And we went around doing that and realised we needed to add why. Putting at the heart of that, what's the need, what's the why? The rest of the diagram is more around kind of institutional change, which we won't go into. Should you be interested in looking at that, there are links there, and there's some free workbooks as well, but they'll be on the slides. So it boils down to that. Think about why, how, who, and what, and then you're on the right path. Right, that is enough from me. But first, let me invite any questions. But you can also disagree with me, that's fine. You can heckle. No? Yes.
Really fascinating work, and I wanted to reflect a little bit more around this impact, because since reference funding bodies have introduced that and there's greater awareness of it, I'm also aware of the damage it can do, and that's especially also with the communities we work in. So do you have any recommendations on what we can share around best practice with that? I mean, I know we have, for example, in our work on obesity, in Obesity Voices, a hub which is a big public and patient engagement, and there's actually a code of conduct there, which I think is a really good way of encouraging that. So we responsibly interact with our beneficiaries rather than, you know, in and out, and some may or may not work. Yeah, you see where I'm coming from.
I do, and my first suspicion is I think everyone here, just by the nature of your research, wants to have good relationships with the people you're working with. And that sounds ridiculous to say, but not everyone does. Some people see participants and everything as means to get evidence rather than people to build partnerships with. So that's you're already ahead of the game in that respect. A couple of things. First thing is, if you are needing to gather evidence and those kind of things, be upfront from the start, because otherwise people will think you're only helping them out so you can get evidence. And one of the things we tend to do is offer an institutional letter that says, it's not this researcher's fault they're asking you. We need it. And it softens that relationship. It doesn't taint that relationship. The other thing is, if anyone's working with a business or you need to go and get evidence, put it in the contract. In 6 months' time, we reserve the right to come back to you and ask for evidence. Thank you very much. It stops it being a personal ask. Anything you can do to stop it going, I'm so sorry to ask. Would you mind if, could you possibly? That's what you want to do. So being upfront with participants, making sure they know and do not have to give you evidence, and businesses to give you evidence somewhere down the line.
So it's almost like an extension.
Exactly. It's the same principle as ethics. But it's the most complicated bit of impact because they haven't quite worked it out yet. So, okay. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to invite you, kind of literally split the room down the middle, just on your tables for 3 or 4 minutes. Have a conversation with people around you. If you don't like them, move. Have a conversation. These guys over here, if you can have a think about why. Why would anyone in society want to engage with, other way around. Why should we want to engage with society? What are the reasons that we should engage with society? So you have a little conversation about that. You guys, can you think about how? So 3 or 4 minutes, I'll kind of shout when we're done, have a conversation, and then I'll literally just have a couple of things flung back at us, yeah? So crack on for a few minutes.
It's the sixth bottle of this.
Okay, just for the purpose of time, and there will be other discussions throughout the session, I'll just get you to pause there. We'll get a bit of feedback. I'm not going to do death by table, don't worry. But we're just going to get a few headlines. So the first one, I'm talking about how. So you will have? Chuck us some thoughts about how we can connect with society.
I'm happy to go. We're having a really interesting conversation because we're from two very different disciplines and two very different career stages. But actually, I think we both had a sort of common approach, which is you have to be proactive.
Yeah.
So I think actually being willing to put yourself out there, being proactive, not expecting things to always come to you, would be one of my kind of big takeaways.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think one of the phrases we often use with the communities is hard to reach. No, we're hard to reach.
Mm.
We're the ones behind the walls, sticking doctor on our doors. So I could not agree with you more. Thank you. And also, what a lovely moment of interdisciplinarity.
Absolutely.
We like that.
Absolutely. Going to put another band.
Yeah. Hashtag impact. Thank you. Another one just from this side?
Just sorry.
Oh, I will shout it at us.
Sorry, on the table, colleagues, there's a little black dot that says push to talk. A little green light will come up and that will amplify your voice around groups. So
Magic.
just a little note.
So
Thanks.
the headlines, and correct me if I'm wrong, the headlines over there were around being proactive, not expecting society and communities to come to you, that you actually be willing to get out there and do it. And these guys are from two different disciplines and we're saying they're going to set up an event and maybe go on holiday together. I don't know. But thank you. That's yeah, fair comment. Fabulous. Another quick point. Anyone else here? Yeah.
So Andy and I are different in the context of we
Can
actually.
you hear? Yeah.
Unfortunately, you can hear my really horrible voice. Sorry about that. So Andy and I do actually work together. So we were framing it around how have we gone about engaging with people and organisations, and our initial reflection was actually speaking to people. And we did a project that was quite global, so we were still able to do that via the magic of video conferencing,
Yeah.
actually speaking to people to understand their kind of needs. And then also when it came to the organisation, a big reflection for us is actually constant interaction with the leader of that organisation to build that relationship, which was, challenging at first, often felt very time consuming, but actually that was very rewarding in the sense of how we got to know each other better and work more effectively because of that regular contact and time that we spent together by weekly kind of catch-up meetings, basically.
And there's so many rich things in there. I pick up on a couple of things. Talking to people, it sounds ridiculous, but some people don't, it's not in their discipline to go and speak to people. So there was working with, there's a, physicist, sorry if there's any in the room, but this was the guy who said it, said, I do impact. I went to a school once and I thought, bet they were terrified. So actually that proactivity, keeping up the comms, going out, that is so important. I've got, this is my quick structure of things. And I think actually everything fits in here. Just a quick thing to say. We're really good at mobilising research. We communicate, we disseminate, we do conferences, we do blogs. That's fantastic. But what we've just heard there is absolutely the next thing, which is we mobilise ourselves. We take ourselves out there as the voice of the research. Because if we don't do that, we're relying on someone reading our PDF. But also, what about bringing non-academics in? Do you have ways that non-academics come in? Lincoln, theatre producers, etc. It brings you closer, those communities in. We have something called the Permeable Manifesto. I suspect it's very similar here, bringing people into these walls rather than excluding them. For the whys, what did you have? Give me a couple of headlines. Why should we engage? He's pressing the button. He's pressing the button.
That's so exciting. Is it working?
Is it working? Yes.
Very good. Just about making the world a better place.
Yeah. It's as simple as that, isn't it? If we don't engage, we can't. It's a basic condition. So thank you. Yeah. Another quick one. Yes.
We said to learn from the people who are living whatever it is that we think is a good thing to research, but to learn from them about what's feasible, what's useful, and to get a better understanding of their lived experiences so we can feed that into the work that we do.
Absolutely. Lived experience is a big one. People, the worst thing to do for impact is to go, I declare what you need, world. It does not go down well. And also, who are we to say? We are not the only experts. The patient is an expert. The person going to the museum is an expert in their thing. So when I put on why, just again, another set of a few ideas. Some of them are in there. We need to engage to understand what's needed, to understand how ready the market is to receive. We might think it's a great idea, but actually, is society wanting that thing, etc. I won't go through it all, other than to really point this one out, to build trust. The further away from society we make ourselves, the less trust they're going to have in what we do. Not because we're doing anything untrustworthy, but it gives the question, why would we hide? Transparency, open, all of those things are massive. And I know Sharon's going to come on to that in a second. Ultimately, impact is in the eye of the beholder. A very, very quick example. I have a colleague of mine, he has multiple sclerosis. He works with people who have MS and talking to people with a particular rare type and said to them, what do you want from research? Expecting an answer like reducing my pain, improving my quality of life. And their answer was to be believed, to be respected. When I walk into that doctor's appointment, they're treating me for me, not the textbook. If that doesn't tell you impact's in the eye of the beholder, I don't know what does. Okay, sorry about that. We've had questions. I'm going to move on to here. Impact's the team sport, and we're going to move over to Emerald now. Impact is a team sport. Impact is never and can never be on the shoulders of one person. It is too big. So we have to engage with society. We've already just talked about that. But we also need to draw on the expertise within our institution, research managers, librarians, etc. There may also be people who oppose or compete in your space. I'll leave that to you to decide if that's you. But I'm going to hand over to Emerald because, and I've put it as the who, as the team sport, the team part, because this really is a story of the ecosystem working together. I think in universities, we sit in our little silos, even within our own teams. And this has been, as you said at the start, much more of a dialogue. So I'm going to hand over to Emerald. I'm going to hand over my mic because I know this one works. Just to tell the story of how they have adapted to this challenge of impact.
Right. I've got a big click into my jumper now. Okay. Maybe I should have it more central. Okay, does that sound okay? Can everybody hear that? Great. Just stick that into my pocket. Okay, so yes, so hi everybody. I'm Sharon Parkinson. I'm a publishing development manager at Emerald Publishing, and I work as part of the community engagement team there. So I guess, you know, probably quite a few of you are not familiar with Emerald. So we're actually a local company, very local. We have head offices down on Wellington Street in Leeds. But despite being local, we are actually international. We have international readership, international authorship, and international offices. We publish journals, we publish books, and we publish teaching cases, primarily in the social sciences, but sort of increasingly in engineering fields. So yeah, I mean, you may still be wondering at this point, why is a publishing person involved in this event? You know, on the face of it, research impact is the domain of academia. Well, the way that I'm positioning this is really as a case study and an example of how a partner in the sector can get involved and has a role to play in the impact agenda. So this is not a sales pitch, this is a case study. So Emerald's support of the wider impact agenda actually dates back to 2017, so like, you know, 6 years ago now. And that's when we really began to explore the concept of real impact and try and carve out our role as agents for change. Even though Emerald are not producers of research, we do have a role and a responsibility about what we publish, how we publish it, and where that goes, who gets to see it. So thinking about that, you know, the bigger picture, and with our belief in social responsibility and responsible management, we ensured that really research impact has become an anchor for what we do as an organisation. So partnering with experts like Julie and with David Phipps, who is Julie's research impact colleague, it gives us an opportunity to better understand research impact, and it also helps to ensure that we do live and breathe it as an organisation. So impact is now like common parlance within the business. Everybody understands what we mean by research impact, and we also within Emerald realise the important role that we have as a publisher to drive it forward and to bring it to life through the activities that we do. So our industry is arguably at the more traditional end of the sector, and historically we have been wedded to bibliometrics, and I'll come on to that a little bit more in a moment, which, you know, while bibliometrics are important, they only measure research attention. They are not impact. So a lot of work has been undertaken at Emerald to position us as an advocate and a partner in this space and to help drive forward that real world impact movement. And that's really meant moving away from the impact factor. So we now have a growing body of proof points that show the actions that we're taking. And again, you know, this is a case study. It's a presentation on how players that are allied to the sector, to academia, can actually get involved. So, oh, I need to get the pointer. I should have had it on there in the first place, shouldn't I? Okay. So looking at this slide, this is how we are talking the talk. So this is us laying down our intentions through our commitment and our stance. So one of the first things that we did, I don't know when we signed DORA, actually, 2018. So back in 2018, one of the first things we did to signal our intent was to sign something called the Declaration on Research Assessment, or DORA, as it's more commonly known. A core thrust of DORA is that journal-based metrics are often misused, ill-applied, and yeah, just not used responsibly in terms of the research and researcher evaluation. So signing DORA is kind of a natural extension to Emerald's commitment to drive that positive change. We also created an impact manifesto, and the manifesto sets out our intentions around, I think, 6 key areas. So I'll just read through what they are. So first of all, championing alternatives to traditional academic metrics and rewards, finding new formats and channels to disseminate research to reach a wider audience. And that goes back to what Julie was saying about cool outputs, because not everything is article shaped. Co-designing services that help researchers and research managers to develop healthy practices, highlighting and rewarding examples of research that are driving real change, developing more equitable and accessible ways to publish research, and then finally building partnerships and networks which support researchers. So that's our manifesto. We then went on to become a founding signatory, and this is a very long title, of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Publishers Compact. Catchy. And actually, I think we were one of the first publishers as well to sign that. So yeah, we jumped on board pretty quickly with that. And this has been designed to really inspire action among publishers and to accelerate progress to those sustainable development goals by 2030. And Julie did point to the sustainable development goals, but I'm sure most of you or all of you will probably already be familiar with them. So by signing this, it makes a really clear commitment to the underlying principles of developing sustainable practices and really acting as a champion of the SDGs during this decade of change. So because of this, because we are signatories of this, it means that we are committed to publishing content that will help to inform, to develop and to inspire action towards achieving those goals. More recently, we launched the Are You In campaign. That's the logo at the bottom. And this really calls upon our partners and our communities to sign a pledge that really challenges those simplistic and outdated approaches to research impact, so that together we can help drive impact literacy and really help our communities to overcome barriers to impact. So this is an ongoing campaign. It's underpinned by 6 commitments, and for each commitment we offer resources and ideas to help the signatories to make a difference themselves and to become agents for change. So far, there are almost 500 signatories, and they are made up of both individuals and institutions. And in addition to all of these things, for a number of years, we've encouraged colleagues to make a difference through volunteering. So we recognise that our colleagues' passion goes beyond the day job, and we want to give them opportunities really to get involved in ways that they can create community benefit. So whether that's taking part in coordinated volunteering programmes that we run at Emerald, or whether it's doing their own charity things, participation and involvement is always encouraged. And of course, because we are based in Yorkshire, we want to be a local player. So many of the causes and the charities that we support are regional. And the same applies actually for our offices around the world. You know, they work with local groups too to support those and make a difference and contribute to those initiatives in their areas. So moving on. Sorry, I think I've got something in my eye. It's very annoying. It's typical, isn't it? Anyway, I'll try and ignore it. I'll just weep out of one eye quietly. So there I've shared, you know, some examples of how we've set out our intentions and sort of been clear about our commitment. So now let's have a look at how these commitments have been brought to life, how they've been delivered, and I'm going to start with impact factors. I'm going to just provide a little bit of context at this point because, again, most of you will already know what impact factors are, but just for clarity, the impact factor of a journal, and journal is the key word here, is a measure of the influence the journal has in academics research circles. So, and that's based on how many times an article has been cited by another journal. So the higher the impact factor, essentially, the more influential the journal. This I find really fascinating, but the reason the impact factors came about was really as an aid to assist librarians in making purchasing decisions. But sadly, that purpose has been lost over time, and we've now arrived at a point where the impact factors of a journal are being used to measure the value of the researchers as people. And they're often being used to make career progression decisions. So very, very crudely put, this is super crudely put, if you don't publish in a high impact journal, then potentially you may not get tenure, or potentially you may not be promoted. This is another reason why we signed DORA. So publishers have traditionally really strived for high impact factors for their journals, and that's because the impact factor has been used as a tool to attract submissions from authors. So one of the most challenging aspects really about our stance here on impact factors has been the shift in our messages to market around, you know, the impact factor number. So we've been very bold, and we've stopped leading with the impact factor in our marketing and author communications, really turning down the volume there so that we can amplify our stance on real impact. Of course, you know, we recognise that impact factors are still very important. They do still have a role to play. But what we advocate at Emerald is it's called the basket of metrics approach. And this means just considering the impact factor as one measure of a wider set of measures. So you can look at general article influence in terms of how many times has the article been downloaded? Is it being shared with readers, colleagues? Is it being talked about on social media? So these things, when coupled with the impact factor, actually create a bigger and a better story. You know, the overall picture of influence that article has had is much stronger. Now, taking this stance, surprisingly, hasn't had a negative effect on the impact factors of Emerald's journals. In fact, we had a record year this year in terms of overall performance. So yeah, we are still tracking and measuring impact factors despite the fact that we're not putting them front and centre. But that's because we still, as a publisher, need to see what kind of influence they're having. But we do fully understand that this is not by any means a measure of quality or an indicator of real impact. And it's certainly not a responsible measure to define the worth of a researcher's work. So what other things are we doing to support our commitments? Well, we believe that a new generation of scholars are going to need to demonstrate impact in lots of different ways. And this is really going to be hard baked into expectations throughout their careers. So we wanted to embed into our own publishing programme an outlet for our author communities to share what they have achieved in terms of impact. So with this in mind, our flagship marketing journal, which is the European Journal of Marketing, has introduced a new type of submission called impact articles. So this new type of article aims to celebrate and to make explicit the impact of research with a structure that is different to a standard research article. So the aim really with these articles is to help understand, design, demonstrate and track impact. So problem generation, working with stakeholders, tracking and measuring impact are really drawn out through this format. There's a snippet there on screen, and this has been provided, a quote that was provided from Professor Debbie Keeling, who is one of the regional editors for the journal. And what she says is that this new article type provides you with a platform to celebrate that impact, share learnings and good impact practice, and lead on debates about impact within and beyond our community. We're actually in the process of rolling this out to some of our other journals, and that's been based on the feedback that we've received from the European Journal of Marketing articles. So very much a market-driven development. We also have a Real Impact Awards programme, and it's now entering its 6th year, so they're quite established. There are 4 different categories, but overall the aims of the awards are to raise the profile of individuals and the teams and the institutions that are leading and that are really committed to real impact. To recognise innovative approaches to achieving real impact, to bridge the gap between research and practice by celebrating collaborative ways of working, and to tell the real impact success stories and just generally celebrate those who are driving the debate. So every year we receive entries from around the world. In fact, I think the window opens up again in January. I don't know if, yeah, Joe's nodding. So yeah, in January, the window opens again. But yeah, we receive entries from all around the world, very diverse areas and fields of research. So from things like resilience to floods through to bloodborne virus prevention. The awards don't just stop at recognition. We also ensure that the winning and the highly commended research has an ongoing platform. And that's through dedicated web pages that we provide that describe the work. And we also work with the winners to develop further outputs such as podcasts and blogs so that the research can be distilled and, adapted into different formats to appeal to different audiences. I mentioned earlier that Emerald is a signatory of the UN SDGs Publishers Compact, and that means a lot of our activity as a business really aligns with the SDGs, and it helps to support their achievement through the articles and the books that we publish, but also through how we organise ourselves as a business actually, and around the activities that we undertake. So in the past few years, we've introduced 5 goal areas that you can see here on screen. These goal areas are interdisciplinary and they're all aligned to multiple SDGs. So the purpose really of each goal area is to allow us to showcase the published content, obviously addressing really topical issues, that's the primary purpose, but it allows us to showcase the things that we've published, and also to create new types of content to supplement the research. So we commission viewpoints, we create videos, blogs, infographics, and these all help to distill the research so that it can appeal to a broader audience. Yes, this is not impact in itself, but it's helping to create a pathway for impact because it's making the research much more accessible to audiences that traditionally maybe wouldn't have been able to get hold of the research. So thinking about people like practitioners, policymakers, and those who are in economically challenged regions. We also use the goal areas actually to provide a platform for different voices so that we can create a diverse and rich collection of activities and opinion. So another enabler to achieving impact is through open access publishing, and Julie did mention that as well, that open research, open access. So for instance, it has so many benefits. It has so many, and these are just a few of the benefits. It can increase the visibility and the reach of your work because obviously there are no paywall barriers. That again means that it can get in front of the people who may not have traditionally been able to access the research, so the practitioners, the policymakers, but also those researchers whose institutions don't have journal subscriptions. We also know that open access is compliant with many funding bodies who are increasingly introducing open access mandates to the research grants that they award. Another benefit is that it allows research to be built upon more easily by others. And also, open access journals can provide a better home for interdisciplinary research because this type of research doesn't need to be shoehorned into a traditional journal, which will then just typically serve one sort of discipline, one limited audience. So in recognition of the important role that open access has, We've ensured that all the 350 plus journals that we publish have a route to open access. We've also committed to an open access launch programme, and this year saw 4 new journals. Next year we'll have 6 new journals, and then we'll have more beyond. So final slide. So, you know, having talked through some of the examples, the activities that underpin our commitments, we've also taken steps to support the impact agenda by making a clear investment actually in something called impact services. One of the first outcomes that our collaboration with Julie and David had was we produced 2 workbooks, and they were designed to support furthering impact literacy in the sector, and they're still available today. And I think actually the slide that you showed had a link to them. But we've also gone further and we've developed the framework for a digital service which enables and supports planning for change at a university level, which can help achieve more successful impact outcomes. So within this service, we're looking to advance impact literacy, and we're doing that in 3 ways. So there's an impact planner, there is an institutional health check diagnostic tool, and there are impact skills resources, and there's a repository of learning materials. So obviously these things will boost a researcher's individual knowledge and understanding, but it will also support an institution to deliver more comprehensive impact training. So that's the case study of Emerald, as you know, a partner in this space. I don't know what the plan is now, Julie, whether we have questions or Yeah, I just want to say, I know that Sue already pointed out Julie's book, but I do want to make, because Julie is far too modest to do that herself. But yeah, this really is definitely worth a read. So yeah, I wanted to say that before we moved on to questions. So yeah, does anybody have any questions? Okay, no? Activity or, yeah?
I don't bring the publishing team with me wherever I go.
No.
That's quite the Mariah Carey, isn't it? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right.
Yeah, you can do it. I'll do it.
Oh, there we go. Brilliant. Right. Give you a chance to chat again, because impact is, as we know, about people and discussion. What you've just heard there is, I think, absolutely a case in point of how a partner in this sector steps forward. I am, and these guys know this, I am cynical of publishers. I'm an academic. I always have been. Sorry, Tony, you've heard me say this many times. There's a reason I've stayed with these guys for so long, because this is a healthy conversation. All I want you to do is just have a think. If they've adapted what they've done, what can we do within our teams, our departments, our institutions to shift up a gear in impact? What can we do to make it a more impact-rich environment to be a part of? So have a think. What can you do to adapt what you do? Just in your conversations again, 5 minutes or so, and then we'll come back. Find someone else you like. If you didn't like the people before, find someone else.
This is not. I've just promised myself I was getting this flag here. I want full master classes.
So it is.
Okay, just have one more minute.
It's more granular and,
Should we round those conversations off? If anyone else does need to leave, please do. I have a rule, either go kind of delicately or go with the most diva-like strop. Possibly muster, full on, point out the pram. Nothing in between is acceptable. So yeah, so just, and this is again, it's just going to be an open conversation. Anything I want to throw in about things we can do to adapt what we do? Start for 10. Oh, that's elegantly done. Thank you.
Hi, we're just talking about how, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, we're just talking about how we can improve on the networking between the society and academia.
Yep.
And I was just about to add that also how we write in academia, because I have experience from the industry. Sometimes when I look at the way academia writes, it's not for the society, it's more tuned towards academia. Some people write better, everybody's writing style is different.
Yeah.
But looking at some of the retreats I had in the business world, once we brought a model and it could be like a 3 or 4 page article.
Yeah.
Once the first few lines from the abstract, you've lost people already.
Yeah.
So I'll say that sort of mix of trying to water down the language so that people that are not in academia can better understand what you're trying to convey.
I would absolutely agree with you. There is, we write in academia in a certain way. Yeah. And to get the paper published, to get our PhD, we have to write in a certain way. And some of it is impenetrable. If I work with fundamental mathematicians, their work is impenetrable, except for the mathematicians. Well, quite rightly, that's who it's designed for. But what you've talked about is the opportunity to either change that communication or add a layer of communication. If we need a very technical paper over here that says this thing, add a blog, add a summary, a website, do something. Otherwise, we're blocking people from using it. And a few years ago, I was in a court case, a medical court case. I don't mean I didn't do anything wrong. I was a claimant. And in the court, they were sending us papers to read. Now, I'm lucky, I'm a researcher, I know how to read them, but what patient in that situation is really going to be able to understand the clinical trial results and the statistical significance? I mean, it's nonsense. But if you just kind of, apply that to what we do, how often do we go, well, I've published the paper, and society's going, what the hell? So I would absolutely agree with you. We can easily adapt by adding a layer of just sensible comms on top of it. Thank you. Anything? I don't know if you wanted to add something as well. Actually, as the mic's already there.
Yeah, just switch it on again, but I'm getting used to it now. This comes from having worked in industry before, and it's set a research agenda. And so I think sometimes we're a bit compartmentalized. We think, okay, I've identified my research question. That's really interesting. Here it is. It's published and done.
Yeah.
But I don't think we pay enough attention to what.
Mm.
And quite often those sort of objectives and the sort of built-in impact from understanding what's going on out there, whether it's industry, it could be regulators, you know, a central bank in my case, because I'm an economist, or whatever it might be. I think having that ongoing engagement is really useful, because you find some of those sort of questions sort of filter in, and things that we might not, you know, have much of a sense of sitting in our ivory tower, you know, and we might not get a sense of by having let's add a layer, let's do a dissemination activity. You know, it's like, okay, are we missing stuff? And I think that's really quite important as well. So it's not just about how we engage with people when we conduct the research. Some of it is about how we engage with people before we even think about what the research is. And I think that's really useful to do.
I would, again, absolutely agree with you. I'll give you a quick example. Again, sorry for the sexual health examples, but a few years ago, we were commissioned by a local authority. This was in Coventry, which had the worst teenage pregnancy rate at the time, to develop a serious sex education serious game, so like computing serious game. And they went, the problem is these young kids, they're not engaging with sex education. That's the problem. Go make a computer game. I mean, you can see the problems already, but let's not go there. So we went, okay, we need some funding. We'll do that. We then went and spoke to those kids and went, why are you not engaging? And they went, it's really simple. There's nothing in that training and that education that tells us about coercion. Everything tells us about condoms and babies and everything else. And the thing we are terrified about is being coerced or accidentally coercing. If we had not gone and spoken to them, we'd have developed this lovely game that did nothing that they wanted. So it's not in the assumption that we don't know, it's in the need to check what the issue is. So I'd absolutely agree with you. I'm just going to pick up on a couple of things, kind of not implied, but took me to in my head when you were speaking. The first one is this: the rich opportunity afforded to us by colleagues who are coming into academia from industry, from nursing, from charities, whatever. Grab hold of that. That's such rich pickings. But the other thing, and this was not a point you made, but I want to kind of offer it, is for many of us, particularly those of us who are in permanent roles, we have a real opportunity to help those colleagues who are on more precarious contracts, short-term contracts, to be the kind of buffer to say, let's see if we can find you an opportunity. It's not just on your shoulders. So apologies, I'm not trying to mistranslate what you said at all, but there's an opportunity for those of us who do have a platform to help safeguard those who are in more precarious places. And maybe that's not just impact, but I feel duty bound to say it. Thank you. We will come on to a few other ones as we go through. We're in the final bit. We're going to talk about principles. This does not get textbook, it gets childish pictures. You'll be pleased to know. So, going about principles. Now, this is the book, which has been very kindly flashed past you, has a number of principles in it. I'm only going to talk about a few of them here. But what I want to remind us is that impact is not a compliance agenda, it's not REF. It is to a large extent a mindset how we do it. And the examples we just give there are clearly that, you know, how we can adjust, how we can just make it part of what we do. So I'm going to give you a series of principles that I find myself coming back to every time. The first one is this: chase meaning, not unicorns. Now, a unicorn in this sense, an impact unicorn, is this big, shiny, fantastical, far-off thing. And if only I can get that, I will have major impact, policy change, all of those things. It's the thing we put in our crosshairs for REF 4-star case studies. It's the thing we chase down, and if we only get that, we've won impact. The problem is we miss what's around us. We risk putting in the big, shiny thing that we can get scores from, not the thing that society cares about. So if I give you another example, a few years ago, working with the local authority on teenage pregnancy, REF sauntered in, and we were told, oh, it's lovely, you're working with the local authority, lovely, well done you, but that's not going to score us enough REF points. Drop them, go and try and work with national government, because that scores more. We went, but the problem's here. Like literally, we are working with this community. Yeah, but REF. Meaning, unicorn. The problem with unicorns, the problem with chasing something big and shiny, is we get the glory points, we forget the opportunities we have to make a difference along the way. The dementia patient who can feel safer, the patient who has a voice, the young person who feels like they've got a prospect. They are not big, shiny impacts, but good God, they are meaningful. So what I'm going to invite you to do is, when you're thinking about impact, think about what meaningful changes and go from there. Supercharge that. Make more dementia patients feel safer. Make them feel even safer again. Don't chase just the big, shiny things. Second principle is to work out what your research powers up. I make no apologies for this picture. One of the things that sometimes deters people from doing impact is the sense of, who am I? What can I possibly do? It's only a small piece of research. Okay, but that research can do something. That research can get into someone's hands and make some kind of difference, however small. The question you ask yourself is, what can it power up? What can it enable someone to do? How can it equip someone to make a decision in a different way, or feel safer, or feel more, they have more opportunities? Don't ask yourself what it can't do, ask yourself what it can. Because that way, if you imagine how amazing it would be if we all added that little bit, it'd be astonishing. And a reminder here that it's not just about positive findings. If we think about what our research can power up, instinctively when we hear research, we think about the findings in the paper. But research is so much richer than that. If you think about the research you've done, it is, I guarantee you, far messier and more exciting than the thing you put in the paper. The paper's 3,000, 5,000 words of, here's how glorious I am, yeah? Because that's what we do. And that's okay. We often communicate these things. We now know. Thank you very much. That's what papers do, conference findings. But sometimes we just need to communicate to other people we've rethought something. The business doesn't care how we've rethought it, but maybe another academic does. Maybe we can start breaking our research into lots of different bits and scatter them to the people and organisations that need to hear them. The one I'm going to point you at here is experiences of what doesn't work. We don't publish null findings often. We don't publish it all went wrong. Even, I tell you, we all do exactly the same thing. I guarantee you, we put a little coded note to it under future research should and weaknesses in this study. It was a small sample. Things like that's what we do. We put a nod to it. We're not hiding it, but it's not in our interest to shout about it because that's not going to get the paper published. Fine, don't put them in the paper. Put them somewhere else. Communicate to your peers, your early career colleagues, whoever it is, things to avoid, things that go wrong. My God, how much time would we stop wasting if we did that? Okay, so what I want to do on this screen is just remind us that, yes, your findings maybe get communicated to your profession in papers and everything else, but there's a whole lot of other stuff we can talk about in other ways to other people. Do it. And that's where you can be creative as well. And within that, I said to you, work out what it powers up. All I want to do on this screen is give you some thoughts about the words we can use to describe it. There's a real power in language for impact. If you think about it from a societal point of view, what can research do for me? Okay, I've got 2 kids. What can research do for me as a mum? What can research do for me as a dementia carer? Depending on what it is, it might empower me to do something. It might equip me with the means to do something. It might help me avoid doing something. If you think back to the COVID and Donald Trump saying drink certain bleach, so the research could, probably didn't, but could help some people avoid doing that. There's a power in understanding why someone would use your research. And all this is here is a list of words to help get around the multiple ways our research helps. Actually, I'm just going to put out one word here, validates. I don't mean technically validates necessarily. What I mean is for some people, just having it enshrined in research is proven can help them. I already mentioned the MS example, but if you think about, we do a lot of work on migrant voices and that kind of thing, just having it kind of enshrined in research validates their experience. For patients, it validates their experience. Don't ever shy away from the importance of that. And the engine room we have from our platform, hard as it is, but privileged as it is, to say this matters. Let me get that down for you on paper. Okay. My favourite slide of any slide deck I will ever do. If you're thinking about evidence, you must always think to yourself, what would Jessica Fletcher do? Is there anyone in the room who doesn't know who Jessica Fletcher is? It's fine, but we cannot be friends. Actually, any detective show works for this, except Columbo, because I don't like Columbo, therefore it doesn't work. One of the talk a while ago gasped when I said I didn't like Columbo. Is that a really bad thing? Yes. Oh, okay. Good job, we're quite a distance, probably. I have this argument with my friend all the time. It's purely because it's the mystery of not knowing. And as you know, in Colombo, anyway, it doesn't matter. This is not a talk on Colombo. It can be. Do you want? No? Okay. The thing about impact evidence is it is far more like a detective show than it is a research project. Let me explain what I mean. So much of the effect we have in our research exists outside of our control. It sits with society, who may or may tell us, may or may not tell us what's happened. Our job, certainly in an impact case study, is to collect evidence which shows beyond doubt that our claim of impact must be true. We are seeking the clues often. We are compiling a case. There may be a smoking gun piece of evidence, the citation in a policy document, you know, a business saying, because of the work of Dr. Smith, we went on to sell a gazillion widgets. You may have that evidence, but very often you're piecing it together. You're saying there was this event over here that had a flavour of our research. By being at this event, these school children felt that they might go to university. You see the thread I'm talking about. You are constantly trying to say, where could I find the evidence? What would proof look like? How can I hunt for it? And who can help me on that hunt? So when I very flippantly say, what would Jessica Fletcher do? I actually mean there's a fundamental point in there. If you've had to gather evidence, for REF, it's a huge army of people doing that now. This is their job. Or they could be Jessica Fletcher, need a badge. Be a detective. Find out what is going to prove the claim, not just look for a smoking gun that isn't there. I invite you to, you've always talked about what you can adapt, and I'm going to extend that slightly. I'm going to invite you to create a healthy space. This is the diagram. We won't go through that, but it says this. If we as individuals are going to make ourselves more literate about impact, going to be able to do impact in a better way, we need our institutions and our teams and our departments to support that endeavour. Because if they don't, we're always going to be on the back foot. So to give you another example, I was at a university a few years ago and was doing some consultancy stuff, and this professor said, oh, how's your impact going? And he started to cry. Now, I don't think I'm that terrifying. He started to cry. I went, what's wrong? And he showed me his laptop, and it was a message from his boss that said, it's all well and good, you've had national policy change, but unless it's European policy change, it doesn't count. Fairly sure it does. Yes, one is another layer, another level, but it doesn't kind of just take out of action this first one. How unhealthy a message is that? This person has, strived to get policy change, and suddenly someone's gone, yeah, but it's not enough. You're not winning the beauty pageant. Nonsense. And over the years, seen too many unhealthy practices, which I won't go into. All we need to do is decide that impact is a good thing, and we don't just look for effects on people, or effects on society. We look to safeguard the people trying to do it. It's as simple as that. How can we make it part of what we do? How can we make it acknowledged? How can we make it feel not another bolt-on to a busy day? We are all incredibly busy people. So it's about making it a safe space. And to help with that, this is, and this was mentioned in Sharon's talk, institutional health. So in that deck of things you've got, I want to say institution, very few of us actually can exert change on the institution, because it's this big thing with, oh, universities love a committee after committee after committee, yeah? This is also about your team, your department, your project, whatever your domain is. Have a commitment to impact. It will be in your strategy somewhere, but does your school have it? Does your department have it? Does your project have it? Doesn't mean you have to deliver every bit of impact, but do you have a commitment to it at least? And you've seen from Emerald's stance, they put a commitment at the heart of what they do. Connectivity, how do you work together? Now, I think I'm right in saying you've got researchers, professional services, and various other people in the room. Fantastic. That is the set of connections we need, because we all have the different skills. We all have the different takes on all of this. Work together. It's really easy for us to sit as a silo. And if you sit there in your office thinking, I also need to design an infographic, and I need to contact someone, and I need to do this. There are people in the university who have these skill sets. Find them. Clarity, making sure you understand what impact is and your role in it. It may only be tangential to your role, but we can all help drive it in some way. Thinking about skills development, how are you training colleagues? How are you making sure they're developed? And then how are you working with society? So really, it's a kind of 5-part MOT. That's the easiest way to say it. There's a workbook, all of that, it's in a paper, blah, blah, blah. Just decide that it's a good thing to build in. Last couple of principles. We all have the opportunity to bring impact to the fore of what we do. We have for many, many, many years located this word impact in assessment. So if I say the word impact to a lot of people, they'll hear ref in their head. It's just like a natural kind of conditioned response. Literally the whole rat situation. Hear impact, hear ref. Impact is not ref. Impact is in funding. It's in our knowledge exchange. It's in our connection to society, our volunteering, all of that. So I'm going to invite you, as we all should, to bring that principle of impact, that meaningful change. And you can do it in loads of ways. This is just a kind of short list of things. If you're planning impact in a funding bid, put meaning front and centre. If you're managing impact information, so if you're a project manager, recognise how impact looks and feels and don't just put deadlines on that the business can't meet, etc., etc. I won't go through all of those. The point is this: we each have an opportunity almost daily to just seed what we're doing with a sense of societal benefit. Come back to that in a minute. I'm going to invite you to own your expertise, but not be a jerk. This would have been a different word, but my publishing colleagues would not allow me. It got censored. But put your own word in there, whatever you want that to be. And the hidden ref has some excellent badges that have an alternative word at the end. Reason this is relevant. We know academia can be a kind of pressure cooker of good stuff, bad stuff, everything else. Impact should be the most democratic part of it, because impact is this thing that says, how do you make a difference, not what's your grade. Okay. Now, when it comes to expertise, and this is Goldilocks, bit of a porridge analogy for you, there are some jerks in the sector. And I'm going to guess immediately as I say that, someone's name comes to mind. Hopefully not the same person, that'd be dreadful. They are the people who at a conference say, not a question, more of a comment, and then talk through the coffee break. They are the people that are putting their name first on a paper. They are the people that are making others work late. You know, there's just, I mean, we can list a whole lot of things. It gets, you know, really bad. You get to bullying and all that. But most people are accidental jerks if they're a jerk. They, you know, they're a bit hangry or whatever. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the choice to be a jerk. I was at an event the other week. You will know this story. I'd done an impact keynote, and then guy stood up and did a whole other thing. And at the end, I was like, oh, I went up to say hello. And I'm like, as I walked up like that, he went, let me tell you something about impact. Okay. And he told me something. I went, oh, yeah, that was in my training yesterday. Thank you. I just didn't put it in the thing today. He went, right. Let me tell you another thing about impact. That was in my training as well yesterday. Thank you very much. And he said, with this gesture, may I suggest you dial it up in future? I went, thank you. And as I walked away, this is the acid test of a jerk. He went, you're welcome. My favourite jerk moment, certainly of the year. And I remember thinking, thank you for reminding me who I don't ever want to be. And I think he thought he was helping. Genuinely thought she was going to love this. I did not. However, what is more common, I find, is that people think they don't have the expertise, particularly those, you know, PhD, postgrad, early career, who are less exposed to this and essentially say, who am I to comment? Professor so-and-so says this, therefore, impact does not care about your grade. If you know something that can help, if you have experience, if you have industry experience, if you're a patient, if you're a human being, you bring something to the party, own that expertise. Yes, you can learn more. Of course you can, but also so can professors, senior leaders, everything. It is a democratic thing. Own your expertise. Don't be that jerk. And I put this on here because I think it's relevant at this point. So this is a recent project I was delighted to be involved in NHS Health Research Authority. So this is the bit of the NHS that oversees health research. They govern things like the ethics systems. If those of you have the joy of an NHS ethics system, they do all of that stuff. They have been working very, very hard in the background to try and improve how people-centred research is. Bruce, I didn't say patient, because I mean people to mean patients, carers, people in social care, etc. And so they embarked on a people-led project. So this was a project led by people, as in non-academics, non-NHS people, to develop hallmarks of people-centred research. So to do research in a people-centred way, you need to do this. And I've put it up here because this is a way of showing the absolute opposite of jerkery. This is about working with society in a way that you're being reliable, open and honest, and with colleagues. These are hallmarks for health research, but I think they just translate entirely over to not being a jerk. That's why I've put them up here. If you're interested in that, go have a look. It's a new set of things, but we need to be more like this than this guy. And he had a bum bag. I didn't even notice that. And he went 10 minutes over his time. You know, when things start adding up, like you didn't care about before, but then it starts, you know, anyway, as you can see, I'm still traumatized. My last principle, but possibly the most important, is cheesy as it sounds, to be you. And the reason I say that is because in this weird pressure cooker of academia, we can sometimes forget the passion that brought us into it. As we sat there desperately writing a funding bid at 11:59 p.m. and we filling in the paperwork for another committee, we forget what brought us into it. All of us, one of my favourite things about Impact is I see the commitment, the passion, the kind of implicit geekery of us all to pursue a topic that other people don't really care about. And it's not because I don't care, it's just that you are so impassioned about your thing. I had an engineer a few years ago shouting frustrated magnets at me very passionately, and I still to this day haven't got a clue what it means, but he loved it. Hold on to that passion. That will sustain you. It will keep you in a meaningful position. The only thing I'll say is be you unless you're a jerk, in which case absolutely be someone else. And we're at the end. Thank you very much. So we have lots of time for questions. Wanted to make sure we had that.
Before, as people are thinking maybe that they might like to pose, just a big thank you to both Julie and Sharon for the spirit of the conversation, the way that they presented that information to us, and just the experiences that they brought into the session today. On behalf of Leeds Beckett, thank you to you and the team at Emerald for joining us today. Would anyone like to start us with a question or a comment?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, Ilka.
Thanks so much.
Lots of food for thought. One of my questions was, as I remember when I started in academia, and one of the biggest differences you make as an academic is through your teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So why are we not talking more about it? And I think the RUN study that you reference also found that. Is that because it's not so well articulated yet by the funding bodies? But surely that is one of the biggest ways in which we...
Yeah, the thing, so impact is about the benefits of research, and therefore it has a quite natural line. But there's so many ways we make a difference in academia: teaching, consultancy, entrepreneurship, you name it. Keep making our physical buildings accessible. We do all of that, but we kind of narrowly snapshot in a lot of our agendas. Ref narrowly snapshots, research, TEF, teaching, etc. We haven't joined them up well enough, and I think we're starting to see that. That report you mentioned, one of the things in there is not many institutions shouted about their impact on teaching. Oh, yeah, that's really quite obvious because they said it was eligible. They didn't say it would score well. They said, teaching is impact on teaching is included. We're not going to tell you what it is. So, of course, we didn't do that, but we absolutely need to recognise research is one of the ways we make a difference. Teaching is absolutely another way we make a difference. And we just need to go out about our business being very good at those things and let the agendas kind of follow us. So this is a very researchy talk because it has to be. But it will never, ever suggest that we are not richer in those things, but I don't know quite where they'll go with it.
I think it's more around, how the research informs our curriculum and then changes how our students
the world, hopefully, when they go.
We are generally pretty bad in the sector of feeding our research into our teaching. Broadly speaking, I don't mean we don't do it, but we'll put a little flavour of it. And actually, if you think about it, we have the opportunity to feel it through our teaching, to other colleagues' teaching. We haven't quite set up that cascade. If I would, by extension of your comment, the more we can feed our research into teaching opportunities, into mentoring, into supervision, it's going to be one of the most powerful things we can do.
Thank you very much for that. I found it really helpful. I have read the book, but there's something about actually hearing from who wrote it, which is brilliant. Thank you so
Oh, I
much.
thought you were going to say it was awful.
No, hopefully I'm not a jerk. So we've got quite a few colleagues who really wanted to be here today and couldn't. If you had one or two best pieces of advice, what would they be?
What colleagues are you thinking? Research management, anything?
Research colleagues, so lecturers, senior lecturers, etc.
Okay. So I don't know what the best piece of advice would be, but I think the first thing to do is work out what matters to you. And that's a really cheesy thing to say, not what matters to REF or what matters to the institution at large. Work out what matters to you about how the world can look better. So that's step number one. Step number two then is to say, and what is it I do that can help get us there? It's about putting that line of sight in. Once you've done that, everything else wrapped around it. It's if you lead the charge with REF or any of those things, you're putting your anchor in the wrong place. So and that's, I'm happy to give more kind of structural answers, but they would be my things I would guide anyone to first.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate what we've heard this morning. Can I ask a little bit more about the detective? Not the debate about Jessica and Colombo, but how can you just explain a little bit more maybe about how you gather some of that evidence? Especially one of the things you said in the first talk was about how you evidence someone's voice being heard. That's really important part of measuring impact or demonstrating it. But I know what we do impacts people's lives in a really positive way. I don't have any strategy for gathering that data and proving it. And do you then just write about it? How do you show it?
Okay.
Stuff like that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
Please. Thank you.
One thing saying, this is not me saying buy the book. I'm guessing the book's in your library. So the book, there's a whole section on a lot of that stuff. So that's the first thing just to direct you to beyond a kind of broader talk, I would say. Number of things. The first thing to say is when you're thinking about evidence, you're thinking, what can I gather that proves there's a change? Now, that doesn't have to be a testimony or whatever. It could be recording someone's voice saying, my God, I feel better after this. It can be any format, does not have to be written. So first thing says, not always written. We have someone who submitted videos. The community she was working with created their own videos saying what the change was, and they submitted the video to REF, and we just put in C1 minute 17 in the paperwork. So that's the first thing. The other thing is if you are able to map out where you think the impact might be. So if you're working with a school, what's that effect? What's the benefit going to be on the teacher, the pupils? How can you kind of plan out what you're going to get? And these are very broad brush things because I know that the detail is heavier in there. But then the more detective bit, I talk in the book about four levels of impact. Hard evidence, so 4 levels of evidence. Hard evidence, which is the smoking gun, the citation in the policy, that kind of thing. Brilliant if you can get it. If you don't have that, you need what we're going to call softer proof, which is if you assemble these different bits, attendance at a workshop, a survey over here, you gather the story of impact. If you really can't prove there's impact because you can't see it. So we have people who work in LGBTQ stuff in countries where it's illegal. So unsurprisingly, the people you're working with will not and cannot give you evidence because it would, they would reveal themselves, as it were. You can have proxy measures, which are like engagement statistics, that kind of thing. We're getting weaker here, but it's possible. If all else fails, you have to fall back to full-on Sherlock Holmes logic and say, this effect could only have been possible with my research. That's the broad shape of things. In terms of a strategy, what I would say is have make a plan for where you think the impact could be, therefore what you could gather. work out what things are numbers and what things are words, whereas it's letter versus sales profits, that kind of thing, and gather as you go. So they're really broad headlines, but I'm happy to chat kind of immediately afterwards as well. But they're there. Is that all right? Yeah, cool.
Use the button. Actually, it's just on the back of that question, because one of the big changes with Ref 28 is this move towards engagement and impact. And in some ways, that could make some of the co-production a bit easier. One of the things that I really take away from your talk is that idea that actually the impact is also in the process. It's not just that kind of finished sort of final shiny unicorn. So I'm just wondering whether we would change any of those kind of measures of gathering evidence in order to capture that process. Like, are there, because obviously that's really messy and it is limited. So yeah, just whether you've kind of thought about that. Yeah.
So first thing to say is Ref have not indicated at all quite how this will all work. So the adding the engagement. Stephen Hill has said he doesn't expect the case to be structure to change. And the general vibe is the expectation that engagement will be more flavoured in. There's now like an explanatory statement you have to put alongside to show how committed and active you are in engagement within the unit. So we think that's the most likely location for that engagement stuff. But I think the only thing we can say at the minute based on that and where we're with Ref is collecting evidence, information, feedback on the engagement, what it meant to people, how we co-produce, all of that is the only thing we can say at the minute is probably going to feed that. But we just don't know how it's going to be marked. So it's a very Ref question, I suppose. But co-produce, I mean, co-produce is the main thing. Do it and then work out what the paperwork needs to say afterwards and keep those people close, keep them valid, keep them valued. That's as much as we know at the minute. And they've pushed back, for those of you who are really into Ref, they've pushed back the dates where they're announcing the guidelines. It was winter next year, it's shoved into the beginning of the new year. So we're still flying blind. Yay.
I just ask a question in terms of Emerald. She gave a really nice overview around that sharing as we go, and the opportunity to have the blogs and the open. I love the idea of the marketing and that impact processing. And other journals get that because many colleagues are actually doing that work as we go, but wouldn't have the opportunity of presenting with that work. So colleagues here at Leeds Beckett, how might we go about engaging in some of that for Emerald? Is there anything that you think you could share at the moment that I guess is like a call to action for colleagues here?
Yeah, I think, can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's really strange, isn't it? I can't hear it, but yeah, I would just say really that always think about those different sort of outputs, because traditionally, yeah, research is article shaped, but it doesn't have to be. And if you're particularly wanting to reach a different kind of audience, so a non-academic beneficiary, for instance, think about how they might want to, would they benefit from seeing an infographic or hearing a blog, reading a blog or hearing a podcast? And obviously not everybody here is going to work with Emerald, but many publishers will be able to support on that. Whoever you publish your research with, I'm sure will be interested in helping you to find those different ways of distilling the research to make it more audience friendly, and it's just creating pathways to impact, really.
So just picking up on your comment, like kind of almost writing together those forms of how that voice has been amplified, the value of that. So it's not in the academic domain, but it's in those other ways that communicate it. That's something for us to explore at the institution. Colleagues, any other questions that you want to put to Julie or the Emerald team?
So a quick thing while people are thinking, you actually in KEF for the knowledge exchange framework, they like co-authored outputs. It's part of the metrics. So co-authoring with society has many, many benefits, including to that. And one of the things, just following on from your thing there, one of the things we can so easily do with our publications and our work is to explain to people how you can use this. We tend to disseminate, publish, leave it there, and then do a case study. And there's a bit in the middle where you can just go, here you go, here's a way you could use it. So try and translate it, I suppose, into use as much as you can with words, with whatever it needs to be.
Well, just again, on behalf of Leeds Beckett, thank you to the team this morning. You've joined us as part of our Research and Knowledge Exchange Festival. This is the first time we've hosted this week-long celebration of Research and Knowledge Exchange at Leeds Beckett, and we're excited that that's going to be an annual process, an annual way of coming together. But it's really lovely. It's, although we're here heading the campus, we've got 2 campuses. It's really lovely to see the flavour of colleagues from across the schools and the university. And hopefully, as we move forward, we'll continue to be sparking those ideas. So thanks to everyone, and thanks again to the team. Sure, if you have any individual questions, that colleagues will be here for a few more minutes. And look forward to conversing again on all things. Thank you. That's fine. It's some more hot.
So I think